What up, what up, what up, world? That's better. Oh, we are in the throes of summer here in good old North Kakalaka. Um, Something that's been happening this summer alongside my recovery process is the state has been experiencing a severe drought. I think if they say that it's the worst since like the mid 2000s. And I was alive during that time. Um, I briefly remember like talk about it, but I think like now as an adult, like it's really mind blowing. Um, when you think about what a drought is, like water is the most essential thing, like to living beings. Anything that's alive, like requires water to some degree. Like the very makeup of the body and the cells are aqueous membranes, which means that like water is required to be part of it. Well, they're lipid bilayer membranes if we're getting really specific, but like they're held together like aqueous material and matrix holds it all together. So, like, oh, hey, little birdie. Water is so important. And, you know, this might be the Pisces in me just talking, but like the concept and the idea that we have a deficiency in water in a place where that's not the norm. Like it makes sense that if we were in an arid or desert climate that like we probably wouldn't have a lot of access to water, but like we're I think like a humid tropical place. I hear all kinds of noises. It's awesome. Um, and yet here we are, like having restrictions put on our lives as humans because the environment is suffering from a lack of rainfall, and our lakes are drying up, our creek beds are no longer in existence. Um, Ecosystems are being, you know, uprooted and destroyed. And out of all the things that humans have been able to do, it's fascinating that like we don't put a lot of effort into taking care of our environment by having some sort of technology that could maybe like produce water in periods of time like when this happens. Instead, like we have technology that actually undermines our water resources and takes it away from us. And that's just a whole nother sidebar. I really have no initial direction, but what I'm kind of thinking about is like water as this essential resource necessary for the function of life to exist, for the cycles and circles of life that make up our everyday existence, whether we're conscious or unconscious of it. Like, that's a resource that we need and require. And how is it at times that we like we both create and we lack resources? I guess the concept of resources is really big. Like, I think about resource and capacity. Um, like, if I need 10 gallons of water each day for a thing, but I'm only having access to 8, that means that I'm missing 2 gallons each day. And of course, in the first day, it might not be an issue. But then if I get a chance to like get 12 gallons another day, like it'll make up for the deficit that I experience. But then I also think about like, well, what happens if 8 becomes the norm? And then I'm constantly like moving from a place of a deficit. And how long can I experience a deficit like this before my system like either A fails because it's unable to do what it needs to do because it's working in a deficit, or B, it changes so that the deficit becomes the new normal, and then it becomes a challenge when like we have 10 gallons of water again, and then like what used to be like the norm is now excessive. That's just fascinating to think about, like how capacity works like that. I guess I also think about like energy capacity and human capacity. I'm reading this horror book called The Ruins, and it's a really, it's like gross anatomy 101 and survivalism, and there's a lot of xenophobia from the American youths in that book, so I don't feel 100% bad of what's happening to them, maybe the way that it's happening. Besides the point, there's one character in the book today, and he's been like suffering from some wounds, and in this section he was talking about like recognizing that there's a finite number of like heartbeats in our chest. Like there is a finite amount to life, and not just like the daily living or the energy we require to maintain our lives, but like actual life itself has a limit on it. And like in this same vein of talking about grief and death and whatnot, like how often are we cognizant that our lives will end? And like I think about legacy, and I think about the end of things a lot. Like full moment of like vulnerability, like my grandma has slowly come to the end of her life, and me and my family have been like preparing for that. And last week, like my sister and I went to go visit her and have like potentially what could be the final in-person conversation we have with her. We don't know if she'll pass anytime soon or it might be later, but like just the notion that like we have to be able to prepare ourselves for the end. Once again, like this is a finite experience that we have, and in that finiteness, like we have our perspectives on life. We have ideas about how we're living and how we're thinking and what we're doing, and it makes up the entire reality of our world. However, like our perspectives are only limited to our own understanding. And I think that's why, like, I don't know, like, when people think about legacy and talk about legacies, it's not about, we don't remember the thoughts and the feelings that people had. We remember their expressions, their actions, the things that they said and shared and did. Life is an active experience, and the only thing that we can do as humans is when we're bereaved or grieving loss is like think about the actions. We never get a chance to peek inside people's heads. And I think what I'm getting at is like that's why it's so important to express, like not only for ourselves so we don't get bottled up with pressure, but also because that's the only way that people get to have a lens into our lives. And I share this as being, a lifelong artist, and I won't say lifelong, I'd say for the last 10 years. I'd really chalk it up to that, but like that expression. Also, shout out to this mushroom. That's nice. In our pursuit of living our lives, like the only way that people know who we are is what we share and what we tell them and what we do, not what we think about ourselves. It is for our lives, but like how we are remembered by others is by what we do with them, for them, around them. that's why expression, once again, is so important. Is like it's taking an active step and an active stamp on this world. And like, how else can we live if we're not active to some degree? And yet, like, we have to be able to live within the means that are set for us. We have to live within our capacities. And sometimes life like reaches a point of capacity, and we have to ask ourselves like, what do I do that I've reached capacity? I still want to be able to act to show how I live, but like, I don't know. I'm really just ranting. I had a late night last night, and I got some big feels that I'm thinking about. And I think a lot of this stems too in the fact that this is the last time that I'm going to be doing this kind of wandering talks with this level of hair on my head. Yes, I'm finally cutting off my locks after 10 years of having them. That's a long time. And I know it doesn't look like it because I trim them and shear them periodically throughout the 10 years, but like, it's been a journey. And I was reflecting on it because I was in therapy today and just thinking about like, what were the lessons I was experiencing and learning 10 years ago when I first grew my hair out in 2016. I had just moved back home after not getting accepted into dental school, the DDS programs. And I was kind of like lost as to what I was going to do. I felt like a failure. There was a lot of like hard feelings that I was navigating. And I had remembered that I had cut my hair before a dental interview. And I had like an afro, nice little afro that I was working with at the time. And I cut it because I thought that it was unprofessional. And that's a whole nother conversation because like to some it is and to some it wasn't. But like I cut my hair and then I didn't get in. And I felt like, okay, I will never cut my hair for another person. I will choose when I get to cut my hair. And then in the opposite, I was like, well, if I'm not going to cut it, I might as well grow it out. So hair growth became the norm. And I think back also to like, it was the same time that I started doing photography. I was writing more. I started going to an open mic in Charlotte. Then I found one in Raleigh once I moved back, and that kind of really kicked off my poetry career. And all of a sudden, I had outlets of expression, outlets that I had really never had this much access to, and I didn't really see the essential need that access had because I was just head down focused on the goal of like dentistry and this and that, and like I was ready to like do what most people in society do, is like lock it down at 26 and just 25, 26 and just like ride the wave. 24, yeah, because I'm 34 now. So instead, like life hit me with some losses, and I felt them for a whole season, and then I was like, all right, cool. Like I need to switch it up and I need to begin a new journey. And on this journey, it has been truly a journey of learning how to express myself. Not just with my hair, but with my words, with my actions, with my thoughts. And that's been hard. Like there's been a lot of times where like I have not been sure if I did my expressions correct. Lots of second guesses and mistakes along the way, and those are all part of the journey. And like as I'm getting ready to end this leg of like a journey of life, a decade long leg, like I really think about like, what did I learn along the way? Like I think in each of these locks is a lesson. And there's over 100 locks on my head. I know because I had to try and like twist my hair during the pandemic, and that was the hardest thing. I was almost ready to cut it all then. But like, what are all the lessons? And I talked to my mom about this today too is because, like, we often talk about life as lessons and lessons this and lessons that, but also when you think about school, there are assessments, and it's not even just school, it's like life. Like, you have to be able to, like, do an examination or an assessment or something to determine how well you really know a thing, how comfortable you are. It may not necessarily be mastery, but like, can you show skill and understanding? Can you prove that the lesson that you are learning has been learned? And I've been feeling that lately with everything going on this time of my life. Like, just all this summer has been like, this isn't a season of necessarily learning new lessons as much as there's definitely some new stuff, but this has also been a season of like, let's test you. This has been an examination season. I've been examined and assessed in so many different ways to see, like, where am I? How am I doing? What does drive me? Did I learn from this? Like, is it gonna be a consistent thing? Am I gonna act the same way that I did when I was acting in this situation 10 years ago? Or will I have a new path, a new avenue? And like, I think overall, yeah, there's definitely still things that I need to learn and relearn. And some of them might be like an ongoing process till the end of days, but also like the beauty of being assessed is understanding that, like, I have grown with each of those beats, those finite beats of heart. Like, there's been growth along the way, and growth came from sometimes knowing exactly what to do, and other times, like, I had to fuck up in order to know how I needed to grow. And my sidebar is that I just wish that we would give more people grace when they do fuck up, because it's inevitable that we do. And I think especially here in our society, thanks to social media and just the way that, like, our justice system is set up, and like a lot of like Christian nationalism is set up too, is like, there's truly like a good and an evil. And if you're not good, you're automatically evil. So like, we're pressured to be perfect. And like, that's just a fallacy. Like, there's no such thing as perfection. And yet we strive for it, and we never really give people chances to like learn and atone and really acknowledge. And granted, there's some people that make a mockery of the accountability process, and I think that should be held like with scrutiny. But for the general population, like, you don't learn unless you do something. And sometimes you do it right, sometimes you don't, but you have an opportunity to learn. And I think that's where it comes from. And like, as I'm gonna cut off these locks that have been on my head for 10 years, I'm releasing what I would like to think a lot of the lessons that I've learned, because I know that like, life is moving in one direction, and I can like maybe want to recreate or relive certain things, but like, there's also a wonder of like, what's on the other side. I might be able to tap in and find new resources for life, and in bringing it all back, maybe like, if seasons are in a drought, like, it just becomes more important to conserve your water, to conserve your life, and exert it onto things that really fulfill your life. And knowing that, like, it's better for you to understand how much water and essential elements of life you have and face that squarely, so that way you can manage and plan as best as you can to conserve what will be important. Because the last thing you want to do is need some water and not have access to it because you were unafraid to understand what your capacity is. So go check those meters.